everyone, I'm Mind, and this is set number 80053, Mei's Dragon Mech from the LEGO Monkey Kid theme. This set contains 990 pieces, 2 minifigures, and retails for $99.99 in the US. Let me know in the comments which 2024 LEGO Monkey Kid set you want to see a review on next, and go check the pinned comment if you want to see more of my reviews of the sets from this theme for this year. And now, with all that being said, let's get into the review. So this set's very interesting because it's a giant mech for Mei from Monkey Kid. Now the Monkey Kid theme is no stranger to big mechs, but pretty much all of them have been from Monkey Kid himself. We did get the Macaque mech, but that one's a little bit smaller and it's also still a monkey mech. But it's neat to see Mei get such an expensive set all to herself because typically she has some of the smaller sets of the wave. And I do think this build's actually very good. Now that being said, I do have some pretty big criticisms of this set, which I'll get to later in this video, but for now let's take a look at the build of the set itself. Starting at the feet of the mech, they have a very unique shape to them. They almost have like a bit of a heel at the back, and I think that genuinely looks very cool. Of course, the entire mech uses Mei's color scheme too, so it's the white, the teal, and the lime green. And I think this is quite neat, it definitely helps it stand out. I've of course reviewed lots of big mechs on this channel, such as from Ninjago and other Monkey Kid sets, and I've never seen mech feet done quite like this. That being said, that's not necessarily a good thing, because even though this does look really cool, don't get me wrong, these feet feel very unstable. Like, there is ways to pose them like I have it standing up right now, but they do a very poor job of holding this mech up, and in fact, there's only a few poses you can get it in. The toe of the mech can also be moved, which does lead to more options in theory, but again, it's all about balance, and because these are so thin, it just doesn't hold up the mech super well. I'll talk about posability in more detail later in this video, but here's a very basic example, right? It's 1 foot touching the ground, 1 foot slightly up, to be like a walking pose, and this mech just cannot do that. If you have the arms in the right position, you can hold a pose like this for a moment, but honestly I wouldn't display it on a shelf like this, because all you have to do is nudge the shelf ever so slightly, and well, there you go. So it's not that the mech can't stand up, it definitely can, but if you're used to like the big Ninjago mechs, it doesn't have the ability to stand like they do. You're definitely way more limited in your options. And beyond that too, the actual range of motion on the foot isn't that big. You got a little bit side to side and a little bit forward and back, but even less. And then of course there's the toe that I just showed. So yeah, overall, while the feet are aesthetically very, very cool looking, it does disappoint me how the mech actually stands. Moving up the body, I love the use of the Ninjago SCCBS armor pieces. It's cool to see them used on a larger scale mech and not just smaller ones. I think that's an amazing part, one of the best parts introduced in years, and for builds like this, it's absolutely perfect. It helps create texture all around the leg, and you can see there's not a single side that's not covered up. In fact, even around the back, we have stickers back here that have a little warning symbol and some dragon scales. That does look really nice. Now, something cool about this mech is just like many of the big Ninjago mechs recently, there is actually knees here. It uses a very similar technique that the Ninjago mechs have used, but you can see that's how it can bend the leg. However, though, again, with the issues with posing the mech, the bendable knees are not as cool as they seem. Because while it looks very cool to pose the mech with a bent knee, actually getting it to stay up's another story. And again, I'm not saying you can't do it, because you certainly can, but it's all very particular. As I said, other mechs can do this way better. So I am happy to see the posable knees. I might have preferred if they weren't posable, if it made the mech more sturdy, but I think the issue is more in the feet than the knees, so I do appreciate them being here. We have another stickered part right here on this next unit shield piece, and a similar one around the front, and you can see both legs are designed in pretty much exactly the same way. And again, it looks good from pretty much all sides. The back of the legs here doesn't look as good. We do have anti-studs, but again, that's not that bad. This is LEGO. Of course, there's going to be some anti-studs. Far from the ugliest mech I've seen. By the way, one thing I didn't mention on the knee is I really love this knee pad piece. That also has a sticker on it to add some extra texture, but I like that when you bend the knee, you can also bend that knee pad with it to kind of keep the mech feeling a little more organic. It doesn't just create this giant gap in here that looks super ugly. No, that white bit covers it up a little bit more. I think that's a very nice touch. I adore the piece they use at the hips. It's like this car hood piece and it fits in so well. It covers up those like rigid joints absolutely perfectly, while sticking with the sleek design of the mech and also making it feel mechanical. And the transition from the leg into that hip piece is super smooth, even though those can rotate out too. And again, the ability to rotate out helps when posing the mech, because if you want to move the actual legs out, that can move a little bit too, and just lead to more posability options. The actual range of motion on the legs is everything I could possibly want. You can kick them fully back, fully forward, and fold them out a little bit. Again, as I said, issues come in when actually trying to display the mech like this, but when you're holding it up, it's very fun to fool around with at the very least. Now coming to the waist, I like the sort of layered design, sort of gives the appearance of dragon scales, because of course this is Mei's Dragon Mech, so it's meant to be somewhat dragon-like. The cockpit uses the Ninjago SCCBS cockpit piece, which I'm very happy to see used, because again, it's one of my favorite parts. Other themes really haven't embraced it yet outside of Ninjago. Like, I would love to see it in the Marvel mechs, and they just don't use it, but I'm happy to see that Monkey Kid's using it here. And they use it in a very different way to Ninjago, because it's on a big mech instead of a small mech, but of course this area could still open up, and there's room to place Mei inside. Unfortunately, she does not fit in with her accessories. You do have to take them off, but you just stand her up right here and close it back up around her, and there's how she looks actually piloting the mech. Trans-green windshield is super cool, by the way. I believe that's come in previous Mei sets before, but definitely nice to get here. And there's a stickered computer console piece on the inside of the mech for Mei to use while she's piloting it, and that's a very appreciated touch, because it's something you're not going to see that often, but just helps with immersion. I like that a lot. Great design for the head here, very anime-esque. I appreciate the use of the stickers again, just add some extra detail, but then it's still very clearly Mei with the dragon horns on top. It definitely helps stick with like the overall dragon theming. The head connects on a ball joint, and there's not like a huge range of motion, but it's everything I could want for the head of a mech. You're able to get some emotion out of it by moving the head up, moving it to the side, moving it down. Nothing crazy, but that part's good. Using the dragon hilts here is a fun bit of texturing, and I like these dragon scales to sort of transition into the arms. The arms use the same rigid Technic joint connection that the legs use, and there's a full 360 spin there. Got more stickers with those dragon scales. We have two cannons right here, one's imaginary, one's an actual stud shooter. Of course, you push down on that and the stud can shoot out. These wings look cool, however, they're one of those pieces that, like, if you're playing around with this mech, these are going to constantly fall out of place. So if you're just displaying it, it's perfectly fine, but if you're actively moving it around, sometimes it's going to hit it and it's going to go like this, sometimes it's going to hit it and it's going to go like this. And that's fine, but it's something to be aware of. That always annoyed me, like, as a kid when I'd have parts that would fall out of place that weren't really meant to fall out of place, but it's really not a big deal. Just something I always like pointing out. And there is also elbows on the mech. Now, there's not a separate hand joint that's, like, separate from the lower arm, so the elbow isn't actually that much more posability than your average mech, but still looks very cool to pose. And yeah, just another one of those rigid Technic joints. You can spin that around, move it up and down. Definitely good for posing. And the mech has 3 fingers as well as a thumb at the bottom, and a Technic hole in the hand to hold on to an accessory. The accessory that's in the other hand, of course, is this giant sword. It uses the Ninjago Prime Empire blade piece in trans-green, which did come in a previous Monkey Kid set, but it's great to see that again, and that fits this mech perfectly. It looks super cool. Definitely a very striking weapon. But of course, that's also very easy to remove if you want to take this and put it somewhere else. And then finally, for the aesthetics of this mech, taking a look around the back. The main back of the torso is pretty much just one solid piece. And that, I don't know, it's far from the ugliest I've seen. I actually think the piece is perfectly fine. I would have liked it in a different color maybe. Probably white. White would have looked really good, but teal would have also worked. The gray just sort of feels out of place with everything else. Definitely feels like a back of the mech and not like a part of it. And I think they certainly could have improved that just by changing the color. And then there's one more little thing down here. This mech actually has a tail. That's a very fun touch, of course, fitting the whole dragon mech idea. And it uses these green fire pieces, which were originally introduced for Ninjago Master of the Mountain, so it's neat to see that that's still coming in sets. And yeah, we just have a few mini ball joints, mixel joints here, so you can pose this tail however you want. Now, in terms of posability, as I said, it's not great, and the biggest issue is balance. There's a lot of poses you can get it in, but actually maintaining those poses on the shelf, that's a little more difficult. If you want to actually display the mech using the knees, this is an option. You can have it kneel. And walking poses are possible, they're just not super easy to pull off or maintain. So if you do want to display this on the shelf, my advice to you is honestly just display it like this, standing up normally. Might not be the most dynamic or interesting, but it's certainly the most stable. But even this isn't perfect. Like, most of the time you'll be fine, but if you really bump into a shelf, this thing is toppling. Because since the feet are so small and they're at such a weird angle, they don't provide a ton of support. And it's also very top heavy, so if it leans too far in one direction, there it goes. I did push somewhat hard there, but that's the mech in its most stable pose pretty much. The wackier the pose, the less stable it gets. So yeah, that's one of my biggest criticisms with this set. It looks awesome, super fun to build, super cool to look at, and honestly very fun to play around with and pose like in your hand, but actually displaying it, that's another story. But I think that's about all I have to say for the main build of this set, the Mei mech, at least for now. I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end of this video. For now, let's take a look at the side builds in this set, then the minifigures, and then I'll give you my overall thoughts on everything, including whether or not I recommend this set. The first side build in this set is a service bay for the mech, and this is a pretty cool idea. I don't think we've ever really gotten this before for a big mech. But yeah, you can see the arm at the top's about as tall as the entire mech, and you get these little robots in the set to work on the mech, which I do think is pretty fun for play. That being said, while I like this build, I can't help but feel like it pads out the price of the set a little bit, because the mech does not feel like it should be a $100 mech. It feels like it should be probably $80. And yes, this is a nice bonus, but it's the kind of thing that, like, I'd rather just not get this than get a mech for $80 and pay $100 and get both. Maybe that's just me. Let me know what you guys think of this build in the comments. Because I do like it, don't get me wrong. I just don't think I necessarily needed it, and I would have preferred if the set was cheaper and didn't include this. But yeah, you get a ton of these like large yellow pieces, and there's some cool details down here. For example, there's 2 stickered computer pieces, and here's the first one. And here's what the second one looks like on the other side. The keyboard and button pieces are printed, and those are not new for this set, but still definitely cool to get. And then you just get the standard LEGO set of tools here, which comes in lots and lots of sets pretty much since I was a kid, but those are always nice to get. At the top, you have like this crane or robot arm that can move to actually do repairs on the mech, and you can see I've got one of the robots around the back controlling it. And on the other side, we have one of these trans clear pieces that I think was introduced on LEGO Marvel last year. Really great part, happy to get that, amazing for displays. So it's cool to see it in another theme. And it's basically just to represent the robot flying over to the mech. neck. That's to hold it up in the air. So yeah, there's fun to be had with this, don't get me wrong, I do like the build. I just don't think it was all too necessary to be included. Let's take a look at the service robots while we're here, and I actually really love these guys. They feel very classic LEGO to me, like the kind of stuff I grew up with. And they're very simple, right? Basically the same build in 3 different colors, blue, red, and yellow. They do have slightly different back attachments. This one looks like he maybe has some sort of dial with hot and cold on it. This guy has an octane gas tank, and this guy has a little jetpack. You can see he also is held up on a clear bar to represent him flying. But then they just use like the battle droid bodies, the Ninjago Skulk and arm pieces. And you can move their heads back and forth a little bit, as well as turn them side to side. This little disc for their legs can also move, and they're all exactly the same other than that. You can see this one holds 2 more of the tools. Same thing with this guy. So yeah, I think they're adorable. Nothing too crazy in terms of like parts or anything, but definitely builds I appreciate getting. They just add a little more life to the set. And then here's the other side build in the set, a new version of Monkie Kid's Cloud Bike. And this is another one where like, is it a good build? Sure, I guess. But did it need to be in this set? No, probably not. Again, it just sort of feels like they're jacking up the price, right? It's a $100 set, they made an $80 mech, and they're like, okay, throw in a service bay and a Monkie Kid vehicle. The service bay I actually find better than this, because at least that goes with the mech. This is sort of just thrown in on the side, which I guess, like, if you don't have a ton of Monkie Kid vehicles, or on the other hand, if you really like collecting Monkie Kid vehicles, this is another one to get, but we've had a million Monkie Kid vehicles over the years. I would have preferred a set entirely just for Mei that was a little bit cheaper, rather than adding this, jacking the price up by probably, what, $10? That being said, the build on its own, I mean, it's fine. It's a very weird looking vehicle. I think the giant thrusters out the back are very fun. We have the Monkie Kid cloud pieces, which are always nice to get. These cannons can be moved up and down, and they also have stud shooters on them, which of course push down on, stud shoots out. A few different stickers with like Monkie Kid symbol on it. I actually quite like how the front of the vehicle looks with like this vent right here. And that is a printed part, right? That's not a sticker. That's actually pretty neat to see. The harpoon guns provide some like interesting texturing. That was one of my favorite parts as a kid, so it's cool to see them still used. And the thrusters can move a little bit. You can move them in, move them out a little bit, as well as move the entire build up and down. And then yeah, that's pretty much the most of it. You got handlebars in here as well as a place for Monkie Kid to sit. And here's how he looks actually riding in the vehicle. So I'm not gonna call this a bad build because it's perfectly fine. Like I think it is fun. But as someone who's been collecting Monkie Kid for a while, I feel like I have a million builds just like this one. So it really didn't need to be included here. It's nothing like special. It doesn't really stand out compared to the other ones. It just feels like yet another one to add to my Monkie Kid vehicle collection. So perfectly fine build, and I'm sure you can have fun with it. But personally, I would have preferred if it wasn't included to bring down the price of the set a little bit. Now, here are the first 2 minifigures in the set. We have Monkie Kid and we have Mei. Monkie Kid unfortunately is not new here. He does have like an all-new 5th anniversary suit, but that only comes in one set this wave, and it's not this one. This is just the figure from late 2023. Doesn't make this a bad figure, it is still a good one, but it is one that comes in other sets, so you may already have this one if you're a pretty big Monkie Kid fan. A fun touch about this figure is one of his accessories is a printed LEGO coin piece, and even though that's not a new part or anything, it does have a special meaning in this set, because this wave of sets is for Monkie Kid's 5th anniversary, and of course it has the number 5 on it, so that's a little nod to the fact that it is the 5th anniversary. Small thing, but a very cute touch. I appreciate that. In terms of the actual figure though, I mean, he's good. I don't think this is my favorite Monkie Kid suit ever. The black is an interesting choice. It definitely differentiates this one from previous outfits. That being said, I think the teal on him is definitely more interesting. I do like that each arm's a different color. That's pretty cool. And he does still have dual molded legs, though he no longer has side leg printing. I don't think he's had that for a little while. And the cloud on his back's now metallic silver, which is a fun change. But yeah, this is the same figure from summer 2023. So if you've seen Monkie Kid reviews on my channel before, you've already seen this guy. Face print, I believe, is new. I'm pretty sure that's the one from Megapolis. The alternate face is very similar to things we've gotten before, but I think it is slightly different. It's hard to keep track of all the Monkie Kid faces because there's so many and they all look so similar, but I am pretty sure that's a new one. So of course he's the main character of the theme, is what the theme's named after. It's nice to get him here. Would have preferred the new figure, but the older figure is still fine. But more interestingly, we have Mei, and Mei is an all-new figure for this set, and she has a very cool new outfit. I guess we could call this Mei's Mech Pilot Suit, which is what the new Ninjago suits are also called, but Monkie Kid gets a matching one in his mech from this wave, so yeah, I guess these are specifically mech suits. And they do have a quite cool design. First though, when we talk about her accessories, she of course comes with a dragon sword like she always has, as well as a little laptop piece. This just uses LEGO's book piece, but it has a sticker on the front to represent just like the design on the laptop, and if you open it up inside there's another sticker to represent the screen, and a printed piece for the keyboard. That's a very fun accessory, and I like that it's themed around Mei. And now you have a better look at the actual figure. Now these shoulder pads are an all new arm piece, and they look amazing. They've got like these little dragon faces on them. That is super cool. Very happy to see that here. And I love the colors on the actual torso. The bright green looks so good with the white. The teal I'm not as crazy about, but I still think it fits in. And of course gold on top of everything looks very nice, especially when you reflect it in the light. Good transition from the torso to the legs too. I believe the new Monkie Kid figure for this wave also shares that same leg piece, so they had to make it consistent between the two, which is why there's no green on it, but I think it does a good job of transitioning. And around the back, this actually looks really good. You've got like this giant dragon spine running down the back, and that looks genuinely awesome to me. I really love that. And then of course Mei still has her standard hairpiece she's had since it's the very first wave, which is a quite cool one. I like the printing on it, and unfortunately she still has the same face print, which I do like. It's a good face print, don't get me wrong, but Monkie Kid gets a new face print all the time, and Mei has had 2 total, and she's stuck with this one for a while now. So I would like to see them change things up eventually, but it is still a good expression to have for her. And for her alternate face, she's got like a screen over one of her eyes, and there's how that looks with the hairpiece. So Mei's obviously the more exciting of the 2 minifigures in the set, but they're both definitely good to get. Happy to have them here. And I started that section out by saying these are the first 2 minifigures in the set, but no, those were actually the only 2 minifigures in the set, and that leads us into my overall thoughts. Because that is honestly my biggest criticism of the set. Why is there only 2 minifigures for $100? That is ridiculous. And not only is there only 2 minifigures, but there's no villain minifigures either. In fact, there's no villains in this entire wave, aside from Megaopolis, but even in that set, the villains aren't villains. It's been a joke in like the Ninjago community for a while that like Ninjago always gets these big mechs and the villains don't have anything that matches that, so the ninja just mowing down these villains with these giant mechs. But Monkie Kid took that idea one step further, where now we have a giant mech without any villains at all. And I do think it hurts the playability of this set. Because for something like Megaopolis, right, all the characters being good in that set is perfectly fine. It's a city setting. There's lots of fun to be had with that set. But this is a mech that's clearly meant for fighting. It's got a giant sword in its hand. It really should have something to fight. And yes, you can buy other sets or whatever you want, but I think more should be included in the actual package. Some villain minifigures at least. Especially because we only get 2 hero minifigures here, and one of them is not even new. So my overall thoughts on this set are definitely tough to talk about. Because the actual build I do really love. I think it's a super cool looking mech. It has some issues when posing, but that's okay. It's going to bother some people, it's not going to bother other people. But for me at least, I love the way it looks. And for someone who's collected a lot of LEGO mechs, this one is very unique. So I'm happy to add it to my collection. That being said, the price on this one feels a little high. Price per part is far from bad. But again, there's only 2 minifigures, and probably 100 to 200 of those pieces are these side builds, which are fine side builds, but we didn't necessarily need them. I think it'd be more forgiving with this set if it was like $80, because that feels like what the scale of the mech should be. But $100 with everything I just mentioned, I don't know about this one. Like, I don't know if I'd recommend it. If you don't care about minifigures at all and you just want a really cool build, and I guess also you don't mind the limited posability options, I do think you can really enjoy this mech, because again, it is super cool looking and looks amazing on display. But if you're on a more limited budget and like you're only picking up a few sets, honestly, I think there's better ones out there than this, which is a shame because I do think the build's amazing, and with like better stuff surrounding it, like a cheaper price and more minifigures, I would love to say like, yeah, this is a great set, you gotta get it. But unfortunately, there are just those few things that hold this back from being an amazing set. But of course, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of this set in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!